All right, everybody. It is 6:35 p.m., Tuesday, August 10th, 2021, and you are at the Common Council meeting of the City of Wausau. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is roll call. But don't push your button yet.
Please press yes to indicate your presence. Don and Lou, did you press it? Okay. All 11 members are present.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda are proclamations. I'm not going to read them, but I will let you know that I proclaimed last weekend Hmong Wausau Festival Weekend and the month of August as Adrenal Cancer Awareness Month. You can read those on our website. Next item on our agenda are pre-registered citizens for matters appearing on the agenda and other public comment. I have a list, a stack of people who are ready to speak. You'll get 3 minutes. You'll have, give your name and address, and then go on ahead. So the first person I have on the list is Lori Gintner.
Thank you. My name is Lori Gittner. I reside at 106 Maple Street in Mosinee, Wisconsin. And the first question I've been asked is, why are you here speaking at the City Council meeting for Wausau? And the reason that I'm here is because I'm here on behalf of individuals at risk. And because there is a statute, it is a state law to protect individuals at risk, and that is for Marathon County. And Wausau and all of these citizens that are here tonight are part of Marathon County. And I've had great problems with this. I've become an individual at risk since 2013. I had Lyme's disease. They didn't find it for 9 months. They put me on medications, and it put me into a coma. And I have been battling with things. I was an educator for 31 years, and I'm not able to function as that anymore, so I am an individual at risk. When I became sick, a gentleman scammed me. He claimed I signed over my property to him in a land contract, and it was a rent with option to buy. He sued me, and I have been fighting that for almost 5 years. It has taken me down physically, and even 3 weeks ago, I suffered a minor stroke. And I'm filling up with fluid. I've gained almost 100 pounds. I have flash edema. Okay, so the issue here is, what does this have to do with Wausau? It's because under that individual at risk, the police are supposed to take reports from us and stuff. And they, in 2010, they added a financial exploitation piece to this, that anyone is being financially exploited can file a report. The Mosinee police have refused to file reports for me. Newt Gingrich is putting infomercials out on our local channels here, and he is bringing forth that 65%, there's been a 65% increase in this scam. It is a crime where people are signing over their names. They go to the title of deeds and register your property and stuff. And foreclosure is actually not a valid law in the state of Wisconsin, and it is attorneys that are signing your foreclosure things. And your last point of view said, your right to know lawmakers seek to keep their misconduct a secret. And so we have a lot of attorneys in this area that are helping to do these foreclosures, and they are not valid. at this time. And so I would like the council to look into the individual at-risk statute that is not being upheld, the foreclosure law that is not a valid law, and also the roles that attorneys are playing in keeping their misconduct secret at this time.
Thank you. Next person I have is Bruce Grau.
I'm Bruce Grau, 1115 North 10th Street. Why the calls for environmental and social justice now, do you think? For me, I think business, as usual, has failed us. What's best for business and the Chamber of Commerce hasn't created a community of understanding, mutual support, or equality for all. The golden image of the Chamber is tarnished nationally by its generous political contributions to support an undemocratic filibuster that limits voting rights and blocks a $15 minimum wage that could raise 32 million people out of poverty. Its challenges to COVID mitigation measures contribute to loss of work, illness, and death to Wisconsinites. In Wausau, business as usual has prioritized high-end development as the trough from which social programs must depend for funding. Yet hundreds wait for a home, thousands struggle against a poverty rate that exceeds the state's by over 50%, and unprecedented wealth for the top 1% grows. Business as usual tries to convince us that companies such as 3M have our best interest at heart. They've faced billions of dollars of environmental lawsuits. They appear to have known about PFAS and PFAS toxicity for decades. And in Wausau, dioxin trickles into our river from their direction. Convince the families of the altruism of these industries whose families died and became seriously ill, working in and living next to Crestline. 5 of the last 6 contaminated sites in Wausau have all been found in one poor working class and diverse district in the city. Business as usual says controlling pollution destroys jobs, yet studies indicate its benefits to health exceeds minimal jobs by up to 300%. Business as usual says resolutions that call for justice are telling people what to think. Yet, remaining silent tells us to believe the myth that business as usual benefits all of us. And business as usual. Listen to those most impacted by polluters. Seek public and private support to meet our serious socioeconomic needs. Pass the resolution for environmental and social justice, because when the bottom rises, everyone is lifted in a community for all. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, I have Terry Killian.
Good evening. My name is Terry Killian. I reside at 133 East Thomas Street in Wausau, and I am a co-spokesperson for Citizens for a Clean Wausau. First of all, Citizens for a Clean Wausau wishes to thank the Wausau City Council for taking up this environmental justice resolution. This resolution echoes not only the conventional environmental justice sentiments supported by the EPA, but also the sentiments of the following departments: Department of Justice, Department of the Interior, Agriculture, Labor, Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development, Department of Transportation, Energy, Commerce, and the Department of Defense, as well as state and regional bodies that recognize the importance of environmental justice, such as the Wausau Metropolitan Planning Organization, Wausau Metro Ride, Wisconsin Department of Transportation, and the Wisconsin DNR. I therefore ask, how can this resolution possibly be a negative for the city of Wausau? The second topic which CCW would like to address is this. As of late, false allegations and rumors which were spread against us regarding this resolution were brought to our attention from public records. The false rumors in government emails state that once this resolution is passed, CCW is planning a class action lawsuit with the resolution as the basis, and that the original draft resolution was intended to be a better basis for this fictitious lawsuit against the city. These statements are variably false, and it was well known at the time some of the false allegations were made in writing that the resolution language referred to in the initial draft was adopted from the Evanston resolution. It was not something originally written from scratch by a CCW member or from a council member. This is extremely clear in public records, minutes, and video. We want and expect that these false accusations known to be false be stopped. Policy discussion should revolve around facts, not false rumors. Again, thank you for your sincere consideration of this environmental resolution. This is an example of how the city can take a positive step forward and do it together with its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I have Don Lewandowski. Oh my gosh.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Don Lewandowski. I reside at 174514 Mission Lake Road in Hatley, and I own multiple properties in the city of Wausau. I'm going to be very brief here, and I just think that the resolution should pass because the people in the city of Wausau are looking for some reassurance, and with all the political division in the country going on right now, just sending them a message saying that no matter where you live in Wausau or how much money you make, you're going to be treated fairly, and we care about you. And I don't see how this could be a negative message to anyone, so I hope you guys will pass that tonight to give some comfort and reassurance to all the city residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Rosario Lewis. Maybe not yet. I'll come back. Oh.
Hello, my name is Rosario Lewis. I have been a resident of Wausau for the past 28 years. My husband and I raised 3 sons to adulthood in Wausau. Each of our sons attended Wausau School District schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. My husband and I started a small business here in 1994, which we continue to run today. I come before you today to voice my opinion on the We Are Wausau resolution. I'm originally from the Philippines. I legally immigrated to the United States in 1988 with nothing except a college education and the ability to speak English. I was sworn in as an American citizen in 1992. I am so proud to be an American citizen. I thank God every day for making it possible for me to live in the greatest nation on earth and to be a part of the American dream. When I see resolutions like We Are Wausau being passed by city councils throughout the U.S., it really hurts me deeply. This type of legislation, which portrays my city as a place that is full of racism and intolerance, are misguided and harmful. I lived in several places in Southeast Asia and in Europe before coming to the United States, and I know what real racism and discrimination are about. I can tell you from my own experiences living overseas that the United States is the least racist and prejudiced place in the world. I was welcomed with open arms when I came to this country and have been treated with dignity and respect by the American people. I have lived in several states, including Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, and I've traveled all over the country from Maine to California. In all these places, I have never been the target of racism or discrimination because of my race or country of origin. I love Wausau and truly feel that this is my home. Those who would like to portray this community as a place filled with racism, hate, and intolerance are more than misguided. They are wrong. Some very dangerous ideas have become popular in recent years, such as critical race theory and white privilege. These ideas are dangerous because they try to divide the American people into victim and oppressor groups based on skin color. Whenever you stereotype people based on their race, you are practicing racism. These ideas are un-American. There are many important issues that the City Council should be addressing, such as encouraging businesses to come to Wausau or providing services to improve the lives of our residents.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes has expired. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for sharing. Next up, I have Mario Diaz.
Hello, good evening. My name is Mario Diaz. I live at 1701 Maple Hill Road here in Wausau. I am here as a plant manager representing 3M, the roofing granule plant on 144 Rosecrans Street in District 3. 3M values having been a member of the Wausau community for more than 90 years, and corporate citizenship is paramount to how we conduct business. Our Wausau plant employs 180 individuals, including 132 union members from the United Steelworkers Local 666 and the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Local 662. We serve our community through charitable giving and local volunteerism to numerous nonprofit organizations, including the Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers and Big Sisters of North Central Wisconsin, the United Way of Marathon County, Junior Achievement of Wisconsin, Meals on Wheels, among many others. As a company, we're deeply committed to the foundational principles of environmental justice, equity for all people, responsible management of our operations, and collaboration with the communities where we work and live. 3M embeds environmental sustainability and stewardship in all our operations. In addition, 3M is required to meet health-based standards for air and water quality as issued by the U.S. EPA and the Wisconsin DNR. We're dedicated to work with local regulators to protect the environment for all Wausau residents. With regards to the resolution before the council, 3M shares in many of the concerns expressed by the local business community. Specifically, we are concerned the resolution's broad sweeping approach opens the door to politically motivated regulations rather than science-based solutions. The resolution's passage could open a pathway to use zoning code to stifle potential business growth. This would hurt the city's economic development and future job opportunities for Wausau citizens in all districts. We feel businesses in our district are already targets for zoning restrictions that will be argued to a great extent on the language of this resolution. We have already seen several examples where any support for business growth in our area is met with very negative treatment by interest groups, some media, and overall pressure intended to dissuade all of us from supporting that growth. The current narrative is leading to a situation where any environmental finding, even those done through proactive testing in any part of the city, could be used to stop any project underway. In our district, this has resulted in a decrease of proposed projects and job opportunities. We believe this treatment of business will worsen with this resolution's passage. It will influence current and potential future businesses to rethink operations in Wausau. Worse, it could take away valuable jobs in the districts that need them the most. For this reason, I respectfully request the council to not move forward with this resolution. 3M has honored to be a part of this community for the last 92 years, and we're committed to continuing our work with the Wausau City Council, Department of Natural Resources, and all city residents. We support and welcome any efforts to further these goals in the spirit of cooperation between all the stakeholders in the city of Wausau. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have David Ekman.
My name's Dave Ekman. I reside at 200 Washington Street, Wausau, Wisconsin. I am the president and CEO of the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce. Good evening, Mayor and council members. We strive for a clean, safe environment where all citizens are protected, no matter their proximity in our community. We very well agree enhanced public engagement with diverse points of view is essential in public policy development, including considering perspectives of citizens and businesses of all sizes and industry sectors, especially in local matters. How do we come to this point in time with this resolution and its ability to adversely impact business growth and jobs in Wausau? It certainly was not the EPA or the Wisconsin DNR demanding this of the city. It certainly was not identified as a necessity from the city public officials within various departments. In fact, city professionals found there was no evidence to establish such a resolution. This resolution was transported from Evanston, Illinois to Wausau in March of this year. This is a blatant example of boilerplate, templated, cut and paste public policy development. The critical development of this resolution should take place in this community, not Evanston, Illinois. The citizens and businesses of Wausau deserve policy development process, which is an inclusive process and relevant to its own community. This approach to policy development lacks critical thinking and inclusive process in consideration of the nuances of the community. Wausau, Wisconsin is not Evanston, Illinois. I urge the public to compare the resolution from Evanston to that of Wausau. In a compare-contrast activity, the public will observe that the City of Evanston EJ resolution and the City of Wausau EJ resolution mirror nearly word for word through the entirety of the document where the inclusiveness and critical thinking is in this process. Is it in there? Consider the negative implications of such policy development that this resolution seeks to ignore the science and expertise of environmental and public health regulators and instead make zoning decisions based upon political factors. It uses nebulous concepts of environmental justice as an excuse to change zoning code and to punish businesses or redistrict individual industrial development, and will continually economically harm the City of Wausau. Manufacturing and other activity is the economic lifeblood of the city, the region, and the state. It is by far the largest sector of our economy, providing high-wage, high-growth jobs. Using the zoning code in an attempt to stifle industrial development, as this resolution appears to do, will inflict serious economic harm on citizens of Wausau and deprive the city of growth in its future tax base. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Orlando Alfonso.
Hi, my name is Orlando Alfonso. I live at 1015 Brown Street. I watched the previous resolution meetings on video. I know what was said, and I know how some of you behaved. Alder Rasmussen attempted compromise, others were intimidated to silence, and a few behaved like Banana Republic strongmen, demonizing their conservative opposition. Wausau is one of the most diverse and welcoming communities in Wisconsin, and America is the most colorblind, most accepting country in the world. Stop the race baiting. For the most part, the only racism that the citizens of this wonderful city may be guilty of is the awkward, sometimes clumsy manner that we intentionally go out of our way to welcome those not like us. But leftist thinkers and some of our alders call this microaggression. So along come the current crop of neo-Marxist socialists to invent the latest crisis to divide us. By the way, going back to Karl Marx himself, division is the stated goal. This is not my opinion. It is starkly in his and his current followers' literature. The new crisis, modern racism, and its boogeyman, the white supremacists. This could be the most ginned up fake news of our time. In fact, the white supremacist may be the left version of Bigfoot. The only white supremacist that I have seen is the one played by the black comedian Dave Chappelle. If you have not seen this old skit on YouTube, do so quickly before the rich white internet moguls decide Mr. Chappelle isn't taking his blackness seriously enough. I have two quotes that pertain to the socialist friction caused by these resolutions. The first is this: the community organizer's first job is to create issues or problems. The organizer must rub raw the resentments of people and fan the latent hostilities to the point of overt expression. He must search out controversy rather than find consensus, for unless there is controversy, the people will not act. Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, a favorite book of Hillary Clinton, and possibly in Alderman Killian's library. And just for the record, I did say Alderman Killian. The second quote: examples of white ideology or whiteness include belief in any of the following: individualism, the superiority of capitalism, democracy as a political system, and meritocracy as a path for advancement. Robin DiAngelo, White Fragility, apparently Mr. Neal's new favorite book.
Can we please address all comments to me?
Alders, we are not stupid. We are not going to continually fight your fake charges of racism. We recognize that we are losing freedoms at an alarming rate, and consequently, what we truly fear is your backdoor Marxism. Racism is simply the new tool to divide us. By adopting these resolutions and the considerations of other programs like universal income, you are sending a clear message to taxpayers and businesses. Run for the hills. Soon you will be not the community for all, but the community for race hustlers and activists, and of course, lawsuits. Stop the race baiting for socialism. Stop with the philosophical
Thank you.
resolutions.
Your time has
We
expired.
do not need therapists or life coaches. We do not seek your wisdom as philosopher kings.
Thank
As
you.
Alderman Rasmussen says, go back to do the city's real work.
Thank you. Next up, we have, excuse me, please, no applause. Please exercise decorum tonight. David Stepanek.
Good evening. My name is Dave Stepanek. I reside at 150870 Nightingale Lane, Town of Rib Mountain. I'm a longtime area resident, and I come here this evening to express my profound disagreement and displeasure with the so-called environmental justice resolution that is to be voted on by the City Council this evening. I have two main concerns. First of all, this resolution attempts to move environmental standards and enforcement from the realm of science into the realm of politics, local politics. It doesn't belong there. The United States Environmental Protection Agency and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources are regulatory agencies that are chock full of professional scientists who are perfectly capable of designing, implementing, and enforcing environmental regulations for the protection of all citizens. We do not need local politics and the tribalism that goes with it stepping in front of that. Secondly, this resolution would place undue pressure on local businesses and restrict industrial development. Over the past 2 decades or so, the economy of central Wisconsin has severely contracted due to the loss of at least 4 paper mills in our part of the Wisconsin Valley. I'm thinking Merrill, Stevens Point, Whiting, and Wisconsin Rapids. The loss of these 4 mills has torn the heart out of our industrial base, destroying jobs in those companies as well as in their satellite industries. And now, in the last 18 months, we are all aware of the punishing blow that COVID-19 has delivered to our local economy. The loss of those industries and jobs was caused by outside factors beyond our control. The last thing we need now are additional restrictions on economic development as we, the citizens of central Wisconsin, are attempting to rise from the ashes. This resolution, if put into effect, will cause lasting economic harm to the city of Wausau and surrounding areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Joanne Leonard.
Good evening, and thank you. My name is Joanne Leonard. I live at 923 Maple Hill Road, Wausau. I'm here to speak to Agenda Item 210605, Resolution Adopting We Are Wausau. As I read the city version of the Community for All, I found the words in the beginning paragraph condescending and patronizing to the citizens of this community. Quote, urgently, intentionally, lovingly call on Wausau residents. Really? The words used against those of us that oppose these resolutions are jaspers and maybe shouldn't even have children. I was personally called out on social media for the car I drove and the clothes I wore. It's really? Guess I don't see the word lovingly in this resolution. This is not a We Are Wausau resolution. This is an ideology formulated resolution, and those that oppose it aren't part of the community. One newcomer who, after 2 years in Wausau, was elected to the county board and is spearheading much of the wordsmithing in these resolutions, had this to say when interviewed by a Wausau story in a business newspaper early on his arrival. Quote, "When I left Madison and relocated to Wausau my first full day, I remember noticing the friendliness of the people." A Hmong member of the Diversity Affairs Commission was quoted as saying, quote, "Wausau has afforded me huge personal and professional growth opportunities, many of which I likely would have never received had I been living in a larger city," unquote. Yes, we have heard the stories of those who encountered truly racist and bigoted people. Have the disabled experienced people who are not caring and are mean? Yes. And my solution? Call it out when you see it. Words on a piece of paper will not change people. As to the policy issues of this resolution, the sixth whereas will work to achieve equity and just access to resources. How will you measure that? Anybody that follows this idea knows these words are from critical race theory, the oppressors and the oppressed. Mr. William Harris, in a City Pages interview, was asked why there wasn't something more concrete in these resolutions. Harris' response, "That's coming. First, lay the groundwork for change by acknowledging the problem and building awareness, which is what these resolutions do. This leads the way for conversation that leads the way to change." And the question is, what's coming and what kind of change? The people in Marathon County are not dumb. They have figured it out. Those of us that have followed these resolutions for over a year know we are and always have been a welcoming, wonderful community, open to change. These resolutions go right to the Marxist theory, divide the population, make life miserable for the current members of the community until you, can control them. The apathy and disinterest in the local political landscape is gone, and that means those that want to
Thank
keep
you.
this country free have seen the light. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I have Christine Selm.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. Christine Salm. I live on 11th Street in Wausau. The We Are Wausau and the environmental justice resolutions are starting points. And based on everything I'm hearing from people talking tonight, they think these resolutions don't have any teeth and aren't going to do anything. And then in the next breath, they're going to destroy the city, take away all the economic growth. They're going to make people hate each other. It's just, you can't have it both ways, all right? You just can't have it both ways. What is it? Are these resolutions scaring you because you really do believe you're going to lose business? You really do believe people are going to call you racist? Or do these resolutions scare you because you just don't care to entertain what they're talking about? These resolutions, both of them, are a statement of commitment by local government to recognize that inclusion and equity are important and essential for a healthy, safe, and prosperous community. Essentially what you think as council members doesn't really play a role in this. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about listening to the voices of the people you serve who are telling you it's not so great for them here sometimes, and about you letting them know that you see them, that you're committed to making it better. It is absolutely your job to address this, as it directly impacts our local economy and the people who support that economy. I had an opportunity to read Mr. Ekman's blast to the chamber. And I mean, the chamber doesn't support Community for All. They don't support, obviously, environmental justice. They tried to sue the county for implementing safety measures last year. And now they're doing a mosaic to show how diversity and inclusion is important to them. Actions speak louder than words. Chamber, please do better. And City Council, please encourage the chamber to do better. In addition to the pushback, I too share the concerns of the CCW, or the Citizens for a Clean Wausau. They have no big agenda. They're not going to sue anybody. They are a group of wonderful people trying to make the community safer for the people who live there by not allowing big companies to poison the environment they live in. They are great people, and all of this ridiculous, these conspiracy theories, they just flow through all of this. I don't pretend to understand why these resolutions have been a cause of such a division. They should be easy to pass and should be something everyone can get behind. Instead, we have seen people who should be leading this community politicize these inclusive resolutions and further divide us. We all have much to learn about systemic racism and biases and their devastating effects on marginalized communities.
Thank you.
But I, for one, am not willing to wait for people who deny it exists to do something about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Joel Lewis. He's here. Maybe he's on the phone. You might have to wait a second, Joel. Okay, we can hear you now, Joel. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you, first of all, for allowing me to attend via phone. I appreciate that ability. And I want to thank the Wausau City Council for taking the time to listen to the public comments on these resolutions. Obviously, you have a lot more on your agenda than just that. I am calling to ask that you vote yes on the We Are Wausau resolution as well as the environmental justice resolution. And I do want to comment to those that indicated they've received hateful comments or anything like that. And I would like to discourage that. I hope that even though we disagree on some of these things, that we could do so without attacking each other. But I do want to give, for instance, of a racist thing I just experienced recently myself that really shocked me. I was taking my chainsaws into a local store that I won't name because it was not their fault that this employee said this. But I was wearing my mask because I'm still somewhat nervous about things, and I'm a caregiver. And somehow I mentioned that I was somewhat nervous about the Delta variant, and this cashier then proceeded to say that it's because of all of these immigrants that are coming across the border that's why we still have to worry about the virus. And I mean, I couldn't believe that this was just, considered a normal conversation. And so I do think that many of you that spoke tonight, that you're not, I don't want to sit here and accuse you of being racist, but I do think that you have to acknowledge that there are things happening in this community that make people not feel comfortable. I even as an ally don't always feel safe for speaking up on these things. And so I think that I just hope that you'd open your hearts and minds and understand that this isn't some Marxist effort to destroy the city of Wausau. It's not that. It is the We Are Wausau thing is literally just trying to say we welcome all people to this community, and it's not about creating further division. And I hope you understand that it's a resolution that's coming from a place of love. And similarly, the environmental justice resolution is doing the same thing. It's understanding that oftentimes low-income communities and working-class communities are the ones that face the most, pollution and contamination, and also the least amount of motivation to come and clean it up after, right? Now, so I think that this environmental justice resolution does not punish any current businesses. It doesn't do anything to take away from them. But what it does do is ask any future development to be mindful of this and be cognizant of where you're putting your business and whether or not it damages the environment. And we're not in the time now where we can ignore that anymore. Conservatives are also starting to say, hey, we have to be worried about the planet. And so insurance companies are starting to be concerned about what it's going to cost. Think about the long-term costs if we continue to ignore, environmental responsibility. And so this planet, we need it to survive, and we have to stop poisoning it. And we definitely shouldn't be poisoning it in neighborhoods where people live. Thank you so much for your time tonight, and thank you for your service to the city of Wausau.
Thank you. Next, I have Kathleen Conley-Barth.
Hi, I'm Kathy Conley-Barth. I live at 206540 Rabic Lane in Mosinee. I'm hearing a lot of people from both sides of this issue, and I think there's so much that we could gain by really listening to each other. I don't think we're as far apart as we think we are. I've come to speak to both the resolution supporting environmental justice and also the resolution adopting We Are Wausau. I think these resolutions can't really be separated. They lay the groundwork for attaining our goal of the beloved community. During the pandemic this last year, we have seen the results of our living as though we were separate communities. The disparities in health results call our attention to the compounding effects of these differences in access to jobs, healthy food, health care, clean air, and water. And I'm not saying this is specifically in Wausau. I just think it being a goal that we should have in communities everywhere. It's likely that with climate change, our challenges will increase, yet we have opportunities to rebuild in a transition that is inclusive of all, while promoting the safety, beauty, and integrity of our shared environment.
Thank you. Next, I have Dan Barth.
Thank you very much for allowing me to address you. My name is Dan Barth. I live at 206540 Rabick Lane, Mosinee. Wausau is our adopted home, and we love this town. I'm here to speak in favor of the Environmental Justice Resolution and the We Are Wausau Resolution, and to ask you to vote in their favor. I support the Environmental Justice Resolution, and I believe that every city, every county, every state, the nation, and all the countries of the world need to officially affirm the value of protecting the quality of the air we all breathe, the water we all drink, and the soil we all grow our food in above everything else. We all know how important business, jobs, and our economy is, but without a clean, life-nurturing environment to raise all our families in, we will all be putting ourselves at great risk. We must put the health of our families first. What will we have gained if we put anything before our health? Please affirm the priority of a healthy, nurturing environment for every neighborhood in Wausau. Voting yes for the We Are Wausau resolution is an equally clear choice. What can be more attuned to our shared values than to stand for the fair and equitable, and I got that word out of the Webster Dictionary, pretty common word, treatment of all the city's residents, all the city's residents. What can be more attuned to what we stand for as a nation of immigrants than to welcome everyone with enthusiastic, loving, open arms? Please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Gary Gisselman.
Thank you very much. Gary Gisselman, 319 Park Avenue, Wausau, Wisconsin. In the light of some of the conversations this evening, I've sat in the city council for many years, and we've seen a lot of political discussions with regard to contamination in this city. And I think that in the end, we've resolved it. We had, but this is where this city council is where those decisions are made. I support, of course, the environmental justice resolution this evening, but anything that follows the resolution, anything that the city, this city council endeavors to move on behalf of this resolution will come back to this city council. I mean, the city council will continue to be the last voice with regard to anything that deals with environmental justice into the future. And I think that this is this resolution is a step taking us beyond some of the issues that we've faced in the last 15 years that I was familiar with, but issues that were still in front of us and we resolved. Some disagreements, of course, but that's local politics, and that's what we're in. When you run for election, you're involved with local politics, and local politics is fun, and we get the job done. I live in a Superfund neighborhood, the old Marathon Electric, Wausau Chemical neighborhood. and it is still being monitored. Every 5 years, they have to give a report on it. I think that my neighborhood, as well as other neighborhoods in the community, have a need to feel what is going on in their neighborhood. I think that we need to see what is happening, what this city council wants to happen. And I think that it is this city council, in addition to, of course, the office of mayor and administrative staff to carry out the wishes of the city council. But I think the environmental justice resolution is a first step towards some kind of community agreement with regard to how we proceed with contamination. Contamination is in front of us today, the mall, a variety of the Thomas Street, Riverside area, but I think this gives us a little bit of a chance to communicate to our neighbors, to the community, that indeed this city council and this city is ready to meet the challenges of what contamination can do for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Carlo.
Thank you, City Council. Carlo, 620 Lincoln Avenue. I apologize, I didn't bring any papers, so I'll be reading off my napkins that were in my bag. First of all, I would like to thank Alder Neal for everything that you said in the past meeting that I was recently here. I just want to say that everything that you said made me feel like the young people today say, I feel seen. I just wanted to say also that this last weekend, I was able to go to St. Paul to celebrate our new Hmong gymnastics gold winner, Sunisa Lee. And in that sense, I felt seen as well, that there was a Hmong American representing our community on an international level in Tokyo. So I'm here to support the environmental justice resolution and the We Are Wausau resolution. And for everyone who are listening and don't know, I represent the County District 5, and I am on the school board. Yesterday, we had a school board meeting, and one of the things that we talked about was equity. And we were told that there is an equity issue between Wausau East and Wausau West students. I would encourage the council to keep equity within the resolution, because we, as representatives of the school board, we understand that children are born at different levels of life. They're born into poverty, they're born into wealth, and all that sort. On the way here, I drove past the woodchucks, and there's a game going on. I live in a Superfund site district as well. I would like the attendees to come to a clean and safe place whenever they're watching the woodchucks games. And I think the environmental justice resolution is able to keep our neighborhoods clean and help with contamination as well. I resent the chamber getting into business that is none of their business, especially the county regarding COVID, and now environmental justice. People are not born to be a commodity. We are worth more. And baseline, I represent people and not businesses, and so do you. So please vote for the people, not businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I have Patrick Bacher.
Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to address you tonight. I'm here to speak in support of both the We Are Wausau and environmental justice resolutions. I'm certain you've all been following both issues and have noticed the overwhelming support for the community for all in the city and throughout Marathon County. There are strong parallels between We Are Wausau and environmental justice. I read this from the EPA. A lot of people here tonight have been talking about the EPA, and this is environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Most importantly, this includes equal access to have a healthy environment in which to live, learn, and work. These are all points that are really important in the We Are Wausau resolution as well. I've spoken before in support of bolstering a fair and inclusive community here in Wausau. Supporting diversity makes us a better community. Your constituents and their concerns are your concerns. We are sharing that despite some voices in the community and in this room, on both sides of this podium, that our concerns are controversial. They're important to us. Aren't we all wanting to live in a healthy, welcoming, and safe community? Citizens are here encouraging you to support these resolutions and to tell you that supporting people and their well-being are indeed the most vital use of your time. I believe in the dignity and compassion of fair treatment and opportunity to everyone in Wausau. I believe in a community for all, We Are Wausau, and environmental justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Jackson Seeger.
Hi, I'm Jackson Seeger. I live at 1200 South 50th Avenue, apartment 8 in Wausau. I stand here today as an openly transgender man, as a queer man, and as a marginalized constituent. As Wausau's future, I stand here in favor of both We Are Wausau resolution and the environmental justice resolution. I am tired. We are tired. People of color, the LGBT plus community, disabled people, we are tired of fighting for our safety and security and sense of belonging. Constantly being expected to show up and speak on our experiences and traumas time and time again to what? Prove that we belong in this community? To ask for fair treatment, which we should already be receiving? To ask for acceptance? To feel seen? Last summer during the BLM protests out on the Triangle, we had grown men screaming death threats at a 9-year-old black girl. We had racist comments flung in their direction. We even had soda thrown at a child of color. I personally have been physically and verbally assaulted due to how I identify in our community, due to the reason that I choose to speak up in the face of hate. Does this seem welcoming to you? Is the racism and bigotry still fake and non-existent in our community? Some of these comments I've heard tonight infuriate me and are exactly why these resolutions were brought forward. You claim that you are welcoming and open-minded, but as a marginalized individual, I can say it's the exact opposite. I do not feel welcome, I do not feel accepted, nor do I feel safe standing in this room right now. It may appear to some of you that this resolution, if passed, won't do much, and that's fine. However, in a community so clearly riddled by bigotry, passing these resolutions is everything to our marginalized communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Doug Denny. I think he might be in an overflow room. Okay. All right. He might not be with us any. Oh, there he is. Sorry, I don't know how long it takes you to run from that room.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Doug Dinney, 708 Fulton, and I'm a little bit of a fish out of water here. My expertise is in business development. I've spoken here about 7 times over 6 years on various economic development issues. So I'm really not for or against this. I think the main thing I'm for is to see an equity mindset in this body and in the economic development. And I want to see an economic development team that learns from its equity blunders. As I mentioned, I was here 7 times over 6 years, roughly $14 million in blunders. We all know them, and they were voted on wrong every single time, arguably, but hindsight's 20/20. I'm for an equity mindset where an economic development team can shake a history of vehement disagreement and the inability to compromise and find common ground, including the resolutions tonight. Vehemently, is bitterly antagonistic, according to Merriam's. I'll take you back a couple of years. Developer Mike France stood at this podium, if you recall, declared he was worth $30 million while he was explaining his delays, issues with pilings, the financial stack, if you recall. It was all big hat, no cattle. Yet, several we were told that he met all metrics. Well, the metrics that he failed to meet were the eyes and the ears metric, the gut check metric. Seeing is believing. It was common knowledge he wasn't paying. Well, anyway, months later, this body met in closed session and voted to pay the bills of the $30 million man who stiffed people for hundreds of thousands. So during those economic development closed-door sessions, or this body's closed-door sessions, we had vehement disagreements, if you recall, led to accusations by a former member of bullying, racial marginalization, which birthed the diversity committee. We know where that stands. So what I ask is, will we have an equity mindset the next time that economic development team comes to you and asks you to stroke out a check for $650,000 to Sears and Roebuck of Chicago, Illinois, care of Eddie Lampert? When that building now, a couple of blocks over, lays in ruins in a landfill. So I've got a list of about 7 of these blunders. We all know them. Let's fix that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Last, I have Mike Tomczyk.
Good evening, council members. My name is Mike Tomczyk. I represent Colby & Colby Millwork. We're at 1323 South 11th Avenue here in Wausau. Tonight, I'd like to stress to the council our belief that the resolution is really short on very specific identifiable problems. It's short on specific things that need to be changed, and it's at least, and there's not some identifiable tactics or steps to resolve the problems that have been identified. We believe that more work needs to be done to flesh out the resolution. But I also ask, why is the issue of economic justice not to be considered and fleshed out in the city's strategic plan? It's a process that's underway right now. That strategic plan is supposed to be the guide for the city, the council, and its departments going forward. Some people who have previously discussed the resolution have made comments regarding unjust treatment in past environmental matters. I think that's a real big dig on past council members. Is there some kind of feeling that they did not act in the best interest of the city at the time? I certainly don't believe that prior councils acted in bad faith, as some have inferred. While I certainly don't agree with all the decisions that the council makes, I'm not going to be the Monday morning quarterback, because I wasn't the one in those chairs making the decision at the time. Let's look at a decision that was made a long time ago that I think we're all pleased of. Past councils have identified areas of environmental contamination and the need to remove blight. Think of the riverfront, which was addressed in the preamble to the resolution. What was that like 15 years ago? I think we'd all agree it was terrible. But the city established a vision for that area, got some grant money, and what a transformation that we've seen. Now, while there's still some improvements necessary in that neighborhood, I think we'd all agree that it's a much better place today. Now, that's a perfect example of action, not a bunch of lofty words. And it shows that you don't really need a resolution to do the right thing. So in closing, I'd urge the council to consider that this resolution is not in the form to be passed tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I have William Harris, who submitted the request to speak online.
William Harris, 316 half and a half North 3rd Street, Apartment C, Wausau, Wisconsin, 54403. Thank you, Mayor and City Alderpersons. I'm here to express my unwavering and zealous support of both the We Are Wausau resolution and the resolution supporting environmental justice. I urge all alderpersons to vote in favor of both resolutions. The We Are Wausau resolution is a statement about love of community and its residents. It also affirms publicly the city's values and commitment to being an open and inclusive place where all are welcomed and valued. It's about the furthering of our great city's shared purpose and goals of fostering an environment where we celebrate our differences and meet our challenges together. In doing so, we ensure that our beloved community is diverse, inclusive, and continues to grow and offers opportunities for us all. Our greatest asset is our people that bless this city with a variety of talents, abilities, expressions, backgrounds, and experiences. We are great not despite our differences, but because of them. Our current businesses and our ability to attract businesses, our ability to thrive and flourish is dependent upon our ability to recruit and embrace a creative, innovative, and diverse workforce. Turning our backs on those that are different because of their race, gender, age, ethnicity, LGBTQ status, plus status, mental or physical capabilities, or other protected class will only stand to turn us back to our hateful past rather than a rich and vibrant future. The world is changing, and we can choose to acknowledge it and those around us and live in it or succumb to it. As leaders, you are the shepherds of this great city, stewards entrusted with providing for and maintaining the health and well-being of every resident, and are charged with leading the city forward. We can't give way to our worst impulses of fear, ignorance, anger, and hate. You have a responsibility to ensure this city's economic success and future prosperity. That means dispelling with conspiracy theories and upholding the truth. That means addressing the disparities a number of our underserved and marginalized populations face, including those posed by environmental and health hazards, by passing the environmental justice resolution. And in doing so, you protect those residents' equitable share of environmental benefits and community assets while investing in their safety and health too. It means leading the community to meet all our great challenges. It means exhibiting good judgment. It means standing for what you know in your heart is right. And it means bringing us together as a community. We are united as a Wausau if we can listen to each other, if we can try to understand one another, if we can support each other, if we can lift each other up, if we can love one another and celebrate everyone's contributions. We Are Wausau can't just be some aspirational slogan, though. It must be who we truly are and who we want to continue to be in every facet. Truly, I say unto you, if we are to move forward at all, we must do so together, forging a better path as a community that cares, a community united, and I hope you will vote to make it known that we are a community for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anybody else that signed up that I did not call on? Okay. We are moving on then from our public comment, and we're moving on to our presentations portion of the evening. Our first presentation is about environmental justice from Tony Wilkin Gibart, the Executive Director of Midwest Environmental Advocates. I believe he's joining us by WebEx.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm here. Can I share my screen? I think I have the
Yes,
capability
I
to do
think you can definitely share your screen. I'm hoping this is probably like a 15-minute presentation.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's my plan, and if I'm going long, please do cut me off, because
Oh,
I
I
know
will.
that you, thank you, thank you. I'm very glad to be here and thank members of the council and the mayor for the invitation to speak about environmental justice. I am the executive director of Midwest Environmental Advocates, and MEA is a public interest law center that works with communities to defend all of our rights to healthy water, land, air, and government. And we've had a great relationship with Citizens for a Clean Wausau and helping them navigate environmental laws and remedies related to the issues that they've been concerned about on the southwest side of Wausau. And I think at this point, the work that they have done and members of your community have done to establish collaborative, productive relationships with Wisconsin DNR and with local government really is to be commended, and it's a model. And I think it is also commendable that members of that group and other concerned community members have brought forward this proactive legislation, this resolution to instill these values as you move forward as a city. I want to just provide a little bit of context about what is environmental justice, talk a little bit about its history, and then maybe just address some misconceptions that have been part of the discussion. As is stated in the resolution, environmental justice is the fair and meaningful treatment and involvement of all people regardless of race, color, national origin, income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. And that goal will be achieved when everyone enjoys the same degree of protection from environmental health hazards, and when everyone has equal access to decision-making processes to have a healthy environment in which to live, learn, and work. And I took this from the EPA website, and I actually had the opportunity to address the Economic Development Committee back in October of 2020. And I presented the same definition from the EPA website of the previous administration. And so that's one of the themes of my presentation to you all, is that there has been bipartisan consensus that environmental justice is a concern. It's a lens through which we should look at environmental law and policy, and through which decision makers should consider their decisions. And so it was on the Trump EPA website. It's now on the Biden EPA website. There has not been any change in that regard. And when we're talking about environmental justice, we're talking about fair, inclusive process leading to fair, equitable results. So there's a procedural component to environmental justice, and then there's a substantive component, which is related to the outcomes that we want to see. The procedural component is, again, just equal access to decision-making processes. It's about decision-making processes that are accessible, inclusive, and allow for public input, considering the different barriers and levels of access that folks might have to those input processes. And then if and when we do that, we're going to realize a situation where everyone in the community has the same degree of protection from environmental health hazards, and they have this, we will be considering who will enjoy environmental benefits, who will bear risk, and we'll be able to determine in the larger context if that distribution is fair. So this concept of environmental justice is not new. It developed in the late 1970s and in the 80s. Dr. Robert Bolyard did a seminal study back in the mid-80s of the siting of garbage dumps in the city of Houston, and found that those waste facilities were overwhelmingly sited in low-income and communities of color, even though communities of color represented less than less than 25% of the population of the city at that time. That was the kind of first, or one of the first case examples, but as environmentalists and community members were paying attention to that pattern, it was noticed throughout the country. And so moving through the 1980s and into 1990, the George Herbert Walker Bush administration established an environmental equity work group. And that work group found that racial minorities and low-income populations experience higher than average exposures to selective air pollutants, hazardous waste facilities, contaminated fish, agriculture pesticides in the workplace. It's not a new concept that the way decisions have historically played out, that they tend to overburden communities of color and low-income communities. It's not unexpected or uncommon given that legacy to the extent that that has played out in Wausau. Wausau is not unique. There's not a community in this country that doesn't have environmental justice issues. What would be unique about Wausau is that you would be taking a proactive, positive step to address these issues moving forward. And then, just to continue this very thumbnail history, the Bush administration established an Office of Environmental Equity in the EPA, and that is now the Office of Environmental Justice, again, on a bipartisan basis. President Clinton signed an executive order which directed federal agencies to incorporate environmental justice into their work and programs, and you've heard from some of the speakers about the extent to which state and federal agencies consider environmental justice. So to move to some common misconceptions. And one big one, I think, is the idea that if there's environmental injustice, that means that a governmental body or a decision maker previously illegally considered race or income, or that there was some discrimination that intentionally took place. And the reality is, as I said, that environmental injustices have occurred throughout the country. They can and do occur without any decision makers engaging in any illegal activity or other discriminatory behavior. And that's because many times decisions are made without that wider context in mind. So the reality is that the same environmental issue can burden low-income communities and culturally specific communities in different ways if we don't consider that context. So for example, a low-income family might not have air conditioning, probably doesn't have air conditioning. On a hot day like this, the way they cool down their house, fans, open windows, and so if there's a fugitive dust concern, if there's a particulate matter concern, all of that pollution is coming into the home and can affect the family. In a more well-to-do family, that might not be such as much of a health issue. We know that many immigrant communities, the Hmong community, for example, engages in gardening practices. That's just part of the culture. And so while soil contamination might not be an issue for some communities, if they just use their lawns for grass and recreation that way, it might not present as much of a health issue. But if there's gardening and planting going on and all of those contaminants are taken up into the plants that are then consumed by that family, the environmental burdens are much, much greater. And then as we learn about emerging contaminants and issues with drinking water, for families that can afford a reverse osmosis system or have a really top-of-the-line water filter in their refrigerator door, might not be as much of an environmental health issue. But for lower-income families that don't have that asset, the health effects can be so much greater. So that's a way in which environmental justice can play out without anyone ever being discriminatory or having discriminatory intent. And then when we look at process, we know that processes might not be as inclusive as they could be without anyone being discriminatory or wanting to disadvantage a particular group or community. Language can be an issue for immigrant communities or non-English speaking communities. And so making sure that notices and information are translated and accessible. You know, for a lot of folks who didn't grow up seeing their parents interact with government or don't have a professional background, speaking in front of a governmental body like this might not be something that they are comfortable doing. And so that's something that we need to attend to. And then of course, we know that working families, it's just harder, right, to get to a public meeting like this and present their perspective. So whether they work night shift, work second jobs, have issues with childcare. Attending to all of those issues related to access promotes environmental justice, and without attending to them, environmental justices can come about, again, without anyone being discriminatory. One thing that I've heard is that the enforcement and penalties for our environmental laws are swift and corrective action is taken immediately. And that's unfortunately just not the case. It is a good thing that we do have environmental laws, but they don't operate that way. Once pollution occurs, it can take years or decades to address. And I know that many in the Wausau community understand that reality. Just a few weeks ago, I was on French Island in La Crosse, where they have PFAS contamination. The PFAS are the forever chemicals that are in Teflon. They're highly toxic in small quantities. That community cannot drink its water, even though they're surrounded by, as you can see there, just what should be some of the most pristine fresh water in the world. And it's going to take literally years or decades to resolve that situation. So it's important to be proactive, to not just count on enforcement and corrective action. In addition, enforcement processes also take years. Just go to the Wisconsin Department of Justice website and look at some of the recent cases they settled. You'll see they settled today, and the pollution occurred 4 or 5 years ago. That's not uncommon. So again, it makes so much more sense to be proactive and thoughtful about these issues rather than to rely on enforcement and litigation. And then, again, just related to public information that's available as context. While many, many businesses are responsible actors in Wausau and around the state, we do know that environmental laws have been violated, that public health standards have been exceeded in Wausau and elsewhere. So to assume that the existence of a law is going to, or state regulations, federal regulations are going to protect communities on their own is just not true. And there are public databases that show this information. The clip there is from the Wisconsin DNR BIRDS website that shows reclamation and remediation sites. That's Wausau. You could also go to ECHO, the EPA website, and see that while many businesses are responsible in the Wausau area and elsewhere, there are over a dozen businesses that have findings of noncompliance from EPA in Wausau over the last 3 years. Lastly, others have addressed this. An environmental justice resolution is an important statement of values. It provides a foundation for future conversations. It provides a basis for being thoughtful about good process to gather input proactively from all community members, especially those that will be most impacted. But it does not dictate zoning decisions or other outcomes. Gary Gesselman said it well, that the buck will always stop with elected officials, and you passing any kind of resolution is not going to bind you in the future or future elected officials. And so just to close here, promoting environmental justice in the Wausau community and elsewhere, what we're fundamentally talking about is good government. We're talking about fair decisions that consider the broader context in which community members face environmental burdens in which their health is impacted. We're talking about decisions that protect community members equally. And we're talking about good quality, meaningful public participation on the front end to make sure that we're addressing issues and concerns before decisions are made. This is going to help any community with compliance with federal laws, especially Title VI when federal funds are being used. You're going to identify health concerns proactively, and you're going to be able to identify community concerns early in the process, engage in early, substantive, meaningful dialogue so that you're making the very best decisions possible for everyone in your community. And again, I just want to commend the Citizens for a Clean Wausau and the other community members who have elevated these issues in the community and brought them forward to the council for your consideration. That's it. That's all that I really have for you. But again, I thank you for the opportunity. I hope I stayed within that 15 minutes. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if that's helpful.
Yeah, you did a great job. You hit 14 minutes. Thank you. So I am going to open it up for questions about content of the presentation to the council. I see Alder Ryan, you have your light on.
Thank you, Mayor. I was hoping that I could get a written copy of your presentation. I would prefer having one, and I just want you to be aware that the audience was not aware of your presentation, so I'm hoping we can distribute that in the future. One of my concerns, and that I don't think we have been talking about this overall as a community, and that I've been advocating for over 8 years, is that there is federal dollars that come through the state that have regarding issues about lead water pipes. And it's something that started with Flint, where I grew up in Upper Michigan, but, you know, it concerns me what happened with Flint, and it's still not fixed. And that within our community, the Water Commission has estimated we have 9,200 lead laterals throughout the city, because we are an old city. And lead laterals probably were eliminated back in the 80s, but my house is 101 years old. I was lucky enough to be able to get that updated in the last year. The concern I have is that the commission had recently said that they would like to target low-income households in order to make that eligible for a $5,000 grant through federal funds that come to the state, so that hopefully those costs that would be done by plumbers that the homeowner contracts with.
I'm sorry, Alder Ryan, I want to make sure we're staying to content questions for the presenter on this topic.
Yes,
Okay.
it doesn't cover lead lateral, but I do think that we need to address lead lateral, and it's specifically in our area. 9,200 are estimated lead laterals within the city. How do we, as a commission then, which wanted to target low income, is that appropriate then when you're trying to say you want to be fair to all, but you have limited funding?
Thank you, Alderman, or Alderperson Rasmussen. And I probably shouldn't, with limited information, weigh in on that particular topic. I will say I definitely support your concern around lead laterals, and it's important for policymakers in Madison to understand that that issue exists across the state in older communities or communities with older water systems such as Wausau. And I think it's also important for policymakers to think about lead exposure holistically. So children who are growing up in older housing stock where there's chipping lead paint, have the cumulative effect of lead exposure through lead paint and that exposure pathway, and then issues that can attend when homes are serviced by lead laterals. So I think it's really important to, the ultimate goal being protecting the health of children, to protecting public health, and so to look at the children who are most at risk from those exposure pathways. And so again, just really commend you for drawing attention to this issue, and would agree with you that it should be a priority for funding and for our policymakers to address lead poisoning.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the presenter? Okay, thank you very much for sharing all this information with us tonight.
Thank you.
If there isn't any objection, I'm going to shift things around a little bit, and I'm going to ask that we vote on the consent agenda and mayor's appointments, resolution supporting environmental justice, and resolution adopting We Are Wausau before then kind of swinging back to the next presentation. I think we've been listening a lot, and I know that we have audience here kind of waiting for us to discuss sometime. So if there's no opposition, I'm going to shift around. Okay, I don't see any. The next thing on our agenda is a committee report, Board of Public Works insurance claims for April 2021 through June 2021. It's in your packet. We will put that on file. Okay. Next item is our consent agenda. That is file number 210701 through file number 210108. I would entertain a motion. I have a motion by Neal and a second by Larson. Any questions? Okay, don't vote yet. I surprised the clerk by moving things around.
You can begin voting. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Next item on our agenda, mayor's appointments. You don't have any, so you don't get to vote on that. The next item is file number 210808. It's a resolution from the Public Health and Safety Committee supporting environmental justice. I would entertain a motion. Motion by Killian, second by Larson. This is the part where you all get to weigh in. Oh, sure. We have parliamentary calling out.
I just want to point out for everybody that Alder Killian brought it to my attention that the resolution that was placed in the public packet did not contain the amended version that passed the committee that included a word change proposed by Alder Peckham. And so for that, our office apologizes, and the resolution on the second page under section 2 should read, and there's only two words that change it about right in the middle, so I'll just read the sentence. This resolution establishes the City of Wausau's definition for environmental justice and also serves as the foundation for the future development of practices that ensure active consideration of environmental justice. So the two words, practices that, were instituted at that point. We'll provide the copy of that to the clerk, but that's the one that passed public health and safety and was recommended. Well, the amendment passed by a majority 3-1. The resolution failed on a vote of 2-2, but was advanced to council. So that's the corrected version of the resolution, just so you're starting from the same point.
Okay, thank you. I'm passing this over to you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Alder Neal, I have you up.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, well, I definitely support, the spirit of the environmental justice resolution in general sense and as it applies to Wausau. I do find this document needlessly wordy and lengthy right now. It's peppered with redundancies. It contains ambiguous language or statements that can be easily misinterpreted. I feel the numerous references to public engagement unfairly imply that we have been negligent in that area. But public involvement has factored significantly into our policymaking process and will continue to be. I mean, we saw it tonight as a lengthy procession of people came up and took part in our discussions tonight. And this is nothing new. It's been going on a long time. I would like to see this document edited down to a more clear, concise statement that is Wausau-centric. If it comes down to a vote tonight, I will support it. But I'm going to make a motion right now to send it back to address concerns that have come from staff, from the business community, and others. Thank you.
Okay, so right now I have a motion. It sounds like you're asking to refer it back to committee, question mark? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Rasmussen. Okay, so I have a lot of people on the docket to speak, but now we're on the amendment to refer it back. So I just want to make sure before I call on you that that is what you intend to do. Also, I'm just reminding you of our council rule. You get 2 10-minute speeches per item, but this is an amendment, so I guess if you feel like it. I have Alder Rasmussen next.
Thank you. So we had a lot of public feedback tonight, and I think it bears repeating that we are the only Wisconsin community that is considering something like this. We have heard from our business community indicating that they believe it will have a chilling impact on growth. Obviously, businesses have a choice for where they'll locate. And I think when one community sets forth a process that creates additional public policy that either neighboring or competing communities don't have, that sets us up in a disadvantageous situation. The concern, what I have the biggest concern with on this, and this is why I seconded the motion to bring it back to committee, isn't the change that was made in Section 2, it's Section 4. The City of Wausau will incorporate environmental justice into City of Wausau ordinances, codes, policies, and processes, which could include review of existing codes, which will be conducted with appropriate revisions to bolster and improve environmental justice outcomes. And what we don't know is what that means next for labor, for industry, for business. And I think that people dependent on manufacturing to support their families, either directly or downstream, should be concerned about that. So that is why I'm going to support the motion to refer it back to committee. Should be referred back to the committee it came from, to be clear on that, which is Public Health and Safety. And we can then adjust what needs to be adjusted and consider appropriate revisions that will, as Alder Neal said, address the concerns of the business community as well. So that's why I'm in support of that.
Thank you. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it was encouraging tonight to see all the residents in this room, whether they had differing opinions and perspectives, and I think it's the composite of those opinions and perspectives that ultimately leads to some of the best outcomes when we work together, when we build upon one another's ideas and sentiments. And I guess I'd like to speak to some of the things that were mentioned earlier, I think on both sides of the debate, perhaps with environmental justice. And first of all, let's look at what this resolution is, and yes, let's look at its origin as well. So as Mr. Ekman so effectively stated, yes, this was adopted, much of the language verbatim from an Evanston resolution initially. And there were statements that caused some concern with the city attorney's office and others, and those statements were removed. But let me point out that we come to a contradiction in criticisms. On one hand, I and others were plotting some class action lawsuit based on the wording of the resolution that was drafted. However, as Mr. Ekman stated, which confirms the earlier assertion that that was a false rumor, I and the group did not draft that at all. So there were some words changed to tailor it locally, and after those concerns were stricken from the initial resolution, then it was tailored very heavily to Wausau. And I've heard concerns, I'm hearing now concerns from the quote-unquote business community, concerns from quote-unquote labor. I'd heard some criticism outside of this chamber of my role and opinions on labor. I'm not in the business of self-promotion, but I will give some history when it is relevant. And I was not only endorsed by labor, but in 2020, I was Marathon County Citizen of the Year from the Labor Council. So I assure you, labor takes no problems with my positions. And really, when we talk about the workers at 3M and Colby and on other facilities, when I walk through the neighborhood every day, I rarely have a tie. It's usually a baseball cap around the neighborhood. But we all understand that we are them and they are us. Often the workers are front line on these problems. So, yes, I mean, it's great that some of these companies have offered some assets to our community, but make no mistake, we are not talking historically in Wausau about the masters of the universe, that there were big problems, even when jobs were involved. When you look at Crestline, what's often not talked about in the media is that Crestline, major shareholders, when that was sold to Century Insurance turned around and sued them for common law fraud and negligent misrepresentation for not disclosing massive contamination, as they said, discharged around the property. So when we're talking about these types of issues, we're often talking about problems like that. And this is not personal. I mean, one simply has to look in the newspaper or to use Google to find out right now how many times 3M is being sued just by governments around the state or the Midwest. So it does not take a lot of research there. And lastly on that point, with the chambers injections, I think we must remember that it is the State Chamber of Commerce that is suing the Department of Natural Resources right now to limit its ability to regulate hazardous substances, and not necessarily just with PFAS, but in ways that undermines Wisconsin spill laws entirely. So I would say that when it comes to advice, I think taking environmental advice from the Chamber of Commerce is like taking drug rehabilitation advice from a crack dealer. It is simply not the source of guidance that we would like. And then I know we've got the 10-minute segment. How far am I in, Madam Chair?
You're 4 minutes and 45 seconds in.
Oh, great. Given the weight of the issue, I will continue. Thank you. So let's talk about the resolution and environmental justice. So is this some plot out of Havana? No, it is not, So what this is, as was pointed out, it actually came out of the George Bush administration in the early 90s. And as we know, the EPA came out of the Nixon administration, and the father of affirmative action was a Republican. So if we could put aside the false binary and kind of sophomore division on parties for a moment and look not at left and right or Republicans and Democrats, but what we're looking at here, which is often the community and sometimes the corporate state. In that regard, see, what we have in front of us is purely conventional. So at the beginning, we have used examples of how equity and environment is already committed to by this region in plans. So it dovetails very nicely. And then essentially, we use the EPA definition. Nothing controversial there. I mean, I've heard that the business community here loves the DNR and the EPA, so that should be something to celebrate. And then what we do is, and I've had a great discussion with Mr. Lindman over the past day or so, different times, to look at this data definition. So essentially, the bucket of segments, we're looking at income and then minority or people of color statistics. Now, that's come in from the EPA, and there are reasons we do that. As Mr. Gibbert kind of gave us some examples. So income can lead to disproportionate exposures, and so can long-standing cultural practices. We know around Cleveland Avenue that this isn't some theoretical proposition. We know that there are residents around legacy sites there who, many of us on this council would like to see some of those properties tested, because there are cultural practices that just can create some increased risk. And then also in the city's EPA application that is in the packet, I guess I'm not known for my voice, and so it's kind of monotone and computer-like, and that's often like my style when I assess policy issues. If it's citizen-driven and data-driven, it's a win. And what we can see from that EPA application, that it is a statistical and factual reality, so a matter of fact, not opinion, that historically, as the city of Wausau observed, even just in Census Tract 1, there was disproportionate exposure. There were problems in terms of low-income families and people of color. The proximity to these sites did cause concerns about health and economic outcomes. So I do not have to prove that point. I'd be happy to, but the city did it already in its 47-page document when it submitted it to the EPA. Finally, in this segment, I would say that one citizen had said these things aren't listed in enough details or nuances. I could say, one, you could go to cleanwausau.com or the DNS BERT site and start looking. or else I'm always available. My number and email is online, and I have about 15 to 25,000 documents about Southwest Side contamination that I'd love to share with the public. So this shouldn't go back to be tabled. Let's get on and do some business. The business community is not the Chamber of Commerce monolithically. We have a lot of small business people in town that disagree with them and disagree with them on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Larson, I have you next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am not going to support the amendment either because I feel that we as a council and committees and the citizens as a whole are exhausted over this matter, and this matter needs not to be tabled anymore. I mean, even in Alder Rasmussen's words in the past, he says, we should not be doing this. We should be getting on with city business, you know. Well, let's get on with city business and get this done and getting taken care of so we can get on with city business. So am I allowed to talk about the resolution or just the amendment?
Yeah, I mean, we're technically only talking about the refer back, but,
Okay, so that's all I have then. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Alder Peckham, I have you next.
Thank you, Mayor. I also, I share Alder Larson's dislike for tabling things and sending them back, and Alder Killian would like us to act. But I find myself more in the camp of let's maybe take a breath here. I did get a call. I didn't get many calls from constituents, but I did get one this afternoon from a former council member, and when he started making his point, I was rejecting it, but after I thought about it, I think there's a legitimate justification here that this is a big enough deal for a large enough segment of our community. There's no real urgency to it. We should take some time and sit down with all of the parties and try to hash this out. And to that end, he suggested that we send it to a committee of the whole rather than back to a single city committee. If we did committee of the whole, it'd be one topic. That would be the topic for the night. It could be with the, I guess, preference of the council president. It could be fairly freewheeling and involve a lot of, community member input. So I would move to amend Alder Neal's motion to send it back and send it. Am I going down the wrong road here?
Nope, we're just conferring here. So
Okay.
what I'm hearing you say is you'd like to amend the amendment
I
to
would
send it
amend the
back to the.
amendment to refer it to a
motion
committee
to
of the
amend
whole
the amendment,
meeting,
right.
so we can all chew on this thing. I think it's worthy of support. I think we should pass it, but let's take our time and make sure that everybody's on board and concerns have been addressed.
Madam Mayor? I would amend my motion to be in line with Alder Peckham's idea.
All right.
And to send it to Kyle rather than back to the originating committee.
Is that okay with the person who seconded?
It is.
Okay, so we are now a little bit better parliamentary standpoint here. Did you have anything else you'd like to say, Pat, Mr. Alder Peckham? Nope. Okay, Alder Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. I do agree that, I do think we need to go back and look at things in more detail, and especially for our city with lead laterals and lead major water lines on the street from older construction that hasn't been upgraded yet. But in that regard, we have a Water Works Commission, and that if we're going to be talking about issues about lead and how the priorities for these grants are, I don't know if we should be including the Water Commission, or at some time in the future, that might be going back to them. Because it's looking at, they were recently trying to determine how to prioritize, if we have limited grant funds, who should qualify. And that there was an indication, I believe, of a preference for low-income families. And, but I guess I would leave it up to the mayor, because you are the chair of the Water Commission, and our attorney as to what they recommend.
Okay. So for consideration, we can definitely inform everybody of the discussion about environmental injustice happening at the committee of the whole. Thank you. Alder Herbst.
I have a few comments here that have been brought to my attention from the district. I'm not sure if it is proper at this point, but I would like to share some of the things that were I was contacted. Based on this,
I just want to remind you that we're talking about the referral back to the committee of the whole.
that's what I was concerned. I'd like to get my comments in, but it has nothing to do with going back to committee of the whole.
As parliamentarian.
Right now, the discussion should be limited to the debating the motion to refer back to the committee of the whole and not on the resolution itself.
That's unfortunate because these things are important and, yeah, one of them is a legal question.
I understand, but that's the first motion that was made was to refer back. So if
Okay.
the whether it should be referred back should be debated, and if it doesn't get referred back, then we can continue on with discussing the amendment itself.
We'll take it back to the committee.
Thank you.
Alder Larson, this is your second.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm seeing echoes of what happened at the last Community for All where, you know, the people showed up here and walked away empty-handed. You know, how much longer are we going to drag this out? And what kind of miscarriage of justice are we going to have here? Are we going to have another miscarriage of justice is what happened at the last council meeting when we weren't allowed to represent our districts and the people's voices that never got heard. You know, I honestly think we should move forward with this tonight. We can tweak the resolution later if we find anything wrong with it. I am not in favor of stalling this anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't see anybody else wishing to speak here. So what you're voting on now is a refer to committee of the whole.
Okay, you may begin voting. Motion passes 9-2.
All right, thank you. I guess we'll continue this conversation then. All right, next item on our agenda is the resolution, or item number 210605.
Mayor, could we take a 5-minute recess, considering it's been about 2 hours here? We might want to have a population change
Okay,
in the
I'm seeing
chamber,
people nodding. So I guess we'll take a Peckham stretch for about 5 minutes, and I'll see you back here.